Some people don't run from love because they feel too little. They run because they feel too much. They notice the pause in a text. They hear the change in a voice before anyone names it. And when they finally care, they don't just feel excited. They feel exposed. That's the part almost nobody sees. Their distance is not emptiness, it's alarm. They can want closeness with their whole chest, then pull back the moment it starts feeling real. Not because love is unwanted, because love suddenly has the power to hurt. If this is you, you may look calm on the outside, but inside your mind is scanning for the shift. The delayed reply, the softer goodnight, the joke that landed a little flat. Small things don't stay small in a sensitive heart. They turn into questions fast. Did I say too much? Did they get bored? Was I warmer than they wanted? And the strange part is, you may know you're overthinking. That rarely stops the feeling. Because this isn't just about logic. It's about what closeness wakes up in you. When you feel deeply, connection does not stay casual for long. It starts touching old emotional memory. Not always traumatic memory. Sometimes just the quiet memory of inconsistency. Of wanting more than you could safely ask for. Of reading moods before words. Of learning that warmth could disappear without warning. Of learning that needing someone could make you feel foolish. So now, even good love can create tension. Not because it is wrong, but because it matters. That is why people who feel deeply often look confusing in relationships. They crave reassurance, then go silent. They miss someone terribly, then wait all day to respond. They want honesty, then hide their own tenderness. They don't always play games on purpose. They protect themselves in patterns. You said nothing. You said nothing when a relationship starts getting warmer. At first they feel relieved. Finally, someone steady. Finally, someone kind. Finally, something that doesn't feel forced. And then the doubt enters. Not always as a loud fear, but as a subtle tightening. They start wondering if the kindness is temporary. They start preparing for the change before it happens. This preparation can look responsible from the outside, but emotionally, it is often pre-grief. They pull their hopes down early. They lower their excitement before it can embarrass them. They tell themselves not to expect too much. They call it balance, but it often feels like self-protection. Because disappointment is easier to survive when you saw it coming, or at least that is what the nervous system believes. So they watch, they analyze, they compare yesterday's warmth to today's tone. They can be deeply affectionate, but only in moments that still feel safe. When the bond deepens, fear gets louder. That fear does not always say, "I'm scared you'll leave." Sometimes it says something more believable. Maybe this isn't right. Maybe I'm losing interest. Maybe something feels off. That's why deep feelers sometimes mistake fear for clarity. Distance can feel like wisdom when vulnerability feels unbearable. A lot of people think love problems begin with not caring enough. But some begin with caring so much that your whole body braces. You want the hug, but you stiffen inside it. You want the relationship, but not the helplessness. You want to be chosen, but not so badly that it shows. So you become careful in a place where you actually wanted to soften. This is where mixed signals are often born. Not from manipulation, but from an internal tug of war. One part says move closer. Another part says slow down before you need too much. One part says tell them you miss them. Another part says don't hand them that much power. So the message gets rewritten. The confession becomes a joke. The need becomes distance. And over time, the other person starts feeling shut out. They feel your warmth, then your wall. They sense that you care, but cannot fully reach you. They begin responding to the distance they never understood. Then your fear starts coming true. Not because you imagined it, but because protection changed the atmosphere. This is one of the hardest truths about guarded love. Self-protection can create the very loneliness it is trying to avoid. Not all at once, usually in tiny, almost invisible moments. In the reassurance you needed but didn't ask for. In the affection you wanted but answered too coolly. In the argument where you sounded detached because being honest felt too naked. In the silence after feeling hurt, when what you actually wanted was comfort. Deep feelers often have a complicated relationship with reassurance. They need it, but they hate needing it. They may feel childish asking for softness. They may worry that requesting closeness will make them look weak. So they wait for love to appear without asking. They hope to be understood without translation. And when that does not happen, they feel unseen. But they also feel ashamed for caring so much. This creates a very specific kind of loneliness, the loneliness of having needs you barely let yourself admit. It is painful because the longing is real, but the expression of it gets blocked at the gate. You may have felt this after a simple moment. Someone you love seems distracted for one evening. Nothing dramatic happened, but your whole inner world shifts. You get quieter, less playful, more observant. You start measuring their energy towards you. Part of you wants to ask, "Are we okay?" Another part would rather suffer privately than risk sounding needy. So you say you're just tired, or you act normal while your chest stays tight. This is how emotional confusion grows, not only between two people, but inside one person. Because now you are holding three things at once: your actual feeling, your fear of the feeling, and your attempt to hide both. That is exhausting, and it can make love feel heavier than distance. Distance is lonely, but it is cleaner. You can miss someone without negotiating your own exposure. Closeness is different. Closeness asks for trust before certainty exists. It asks you to stay present while someone matters. It asks you not to flee every time your heart becomes visible. For a guarded, deeply feeling person, that can feel almost unnatural. Not because they are cold, but because they learn to survive through restraint. Sometimes that restraint sounds mature. They say they are independent and private, low maintenance. And some of that may be true. But sometimes it is also a polished version of, "I don't know how to need safely." That sentence changes everything, because now the issue is not lack of depth. It is fear around depth. It is tenderness without enough trust around where to place it. This is why kindness can feel suspicious to someone who has been emotionally cautious for years, not because kindness is bad, but because steadiness feels unfamiliar. They may search for the hidden catch. They may wait for the inconsistency to reveal itself. They may even feel calmer with people who are vague. Ambiguity feels strangely familiar when certainty feels too exposing. That is one of the cruelest patterns in adult intimacy. Healthy attention can feel intense, while distance feels easier to organize around. Not better, just more familiar. And familiarity has a powerful emotional pull, even when it keeps you hungry. So a person can spend years saying they want secure love, then feel restless when it finally arrives. They might question the chemistry. They might miss the emotional spikes they once called passion. But sometimes that missing intensity is not love. Sometimes it is activation. The body can confuse unpredictability with meaning. It can confuse longing with depth. That does not make you broken. It makes you human and patterned. And patterns feel true while they are happening, even when they are costing you peace. This is why deep self-awareness is not the same as emotional freedom. You can understand your pattern and still feel pulled by it. You can say, "I know I shut down when I care," then still shut down right on schedule. Awareness matters, but it does not instantly calm an old protective rhythm, especially in real time. Real time is where it gets hard. A loving person asks what's wrong, and suddenly every answer feels dangerous. If you tell the truth, you might feel dramatic. If you say nothing, you stay misunderstood. So many guarded people choose the third option. They become slightly colder and hope the other person somehow reads the ache underneath. Sometimes the other person does read it. More often, they only feel pushed away. And that creates another painful loop. You feel abandoned in a moment shaped partly by your own withdrawal. Not because you caused everything, but because fear kept editing your truth. This is important to understand without shaming yourself. Protective patterns usually began as intelligent adaptations. At some point, being less expressive probably did keep you safer. Expecting less probably did reduce heartbreak. Reading subtle shifts probably helped you stay oriented around unpredictable people. The problem is not that your system learned protection. The problem is that it may still be protecting you from moments that now require participation, not retreat. Adult love asks for a different kind of courage. Not perfect openness, just honest enough presence. Not flooding another person with every fear, not disappearing every time fear appears. Just staying in the room a little longer. Staying in the text thread a little softer. Saying, "This matters to me, so I'm getting quiet." Saying, "I want reassurance and I hate admitting that." Those sentences do not make you weak. They make you reachable. And being reachable is often the real challenge. Not finding love, but tolerating being met by it. Because once someone truly sees you, control changes. You can no longer hide behind being unreadable. They can affect you. They can soothe you. They can also disappoint you. That is the risk, and it is exactly why many deep feelers keep one hand on the exit. Not always physically, sometimes emotionally. They stay a little self-contained, a little ironic, a little delayed, enough to never fully collapse into need, enough to say, if this ends, at least I never gave everything. But that strategy has a cost. You also never get fully nourished. You never quite rest. You never quite let the love land where it was supposed to. So the question is not whether you feel deeply. You probably do. The question is whether your depth has learned how to stay when it feels something precious, whether you can let closeness be real without turning it into a threat. That does not happen through force. It happens through honest noticing. The moment you want to go cold after opening up. The moment you want to test love instead of asking for it. The moment you decide silence is safer than being known. Those moments are where the pattern lives. And those moments are also where a different future begins. Not dramatic, just slightly more truthful. A little less performance, a little less pre-grief, a little more directness. Enough to tell someone, I pulled back because I suddenly cared more. Enough to admit, distance feels easier, but it is what I want. That kind of honesty will not guarantee perfect love, but it will stop your heart from being hidden behind a personality that looks less needy than it really feels. And that may be the quiet heartbreak for many sensitive people. They are not unloved as often as they are unread. Their tenderness is there. It is just buried under timing, tone, restraint, and self-protection. So if you have ever doubted the love you wanted most, it does not always mean your feelings were weak. Sometimes it means the love mattered enough to scare every protective part of you awake. Sometimes the deepest feeling is not the easiest to trust. Sometimes the heart that longs the most is the heart that guards itself hardest. And sometimes growth is not becoming less sensitive. It is becoming safe enough within yourself to stop treating closeness like danger. Because the truth is, your doubt may not be proof that love is wrong. It may be proof that love has finally reached the place where you usually hide. And if you can stay there, gently and honestly, you may discover something life-changing. The love you wanted most was never the threat, only the mirror.